Your processor can do billions of things every second, but the memory it depends on is painfully slow. So how does a chip stay fast when its own memory cannot keep up? The answer is a tiny, clever buffer called the cache. Let us build it from the ground up. Here is the problem in one picture. A modern core finishes an instruction in a small fraction of a nanosecond, but reaching out to main memory takes around 70 nanoseconds, roughly 200 clock cycles. Watch the cost. While the core could have retired hundreds of instructions, it just sits and waits. This gap, fast logic starved by slow memory, is called the memory wall, and everything about caching exists to hide it. To hide a slow memory, you need a fast one to put in front of it. That fast memory is static RAM. A single cell is 6 transistors wired as 2 inverters that feed each other, so they latch onto a value and hold it as long as the power stays on. There is no capacitor to leak, so unlike dynamic RAM, it never needs refreshing. The cache's density, 6 transistors per bit, makes it bulky and expensive, so you only ever get a little of it. Because fast memory is small and cheap memory is slow, real systems use all of them at once in a hierarchy. Registers sit right inside the core, then a small level 1 cache, a larger level 2, a big shared level 3, then gigabytes of dynamic RAM, and finally the drive. As you go down, capacity grows and speed falls, from a few cycles at the top to hundreds at the bottom. The whole game is keeping the data you need right now near the top. This only works because programs are predictable. They show locality. Temporal locality means that if you touch an address, you are very likely to touch it again soon, like a loop counter. Spatial locality means you are likely to touch nearby addresses next, like walking through an array. Caching is a bet on both. Keep what you just used and grab what sits beside it. So the cache never deals in single bytes. It works in blocks, called cache lines, usually 64 bytes each. When you miss on one byte, the cacher pulls in the whole aligned line around it. That is spatial locality cached in. You already paid for one slow trip to memory, so you bring back a whole neighborhood, betting the next few accesses are already in hand. Now the hard part, the address space is enormous, billions of possible blocks, while the cache holds only a few thousand lines. So 2 questions decide everything. When a block arrives, where in the cache is it allowed to go? And later, how do you check whether it is there without searching the whole cache? This is the mapping problem, and the answers define the cache. The trick is to read the memory address itself as 3 fields. The lowest bits are the offset. They pick the byte inside a line, so for a 64-byte line that is 6 bits. The next bits are the index. They choose which slot, or set, to look in. Everything left over is the tag, the part you store and later compare to prove the line really holds your block. Offset, index, tag, and the address itself tells you where to look. The simplest scheme is direct mapped. Each block is allowed exactly 1 line, chosen by its block number modulo the number of lines. The index bits pick that line directly. To check for a hit, you look at that single line, compare one stored tag, check the valid bit, and you are done. 1 location, 1 comparison. It is fast, and the hardware is cheap. But that single choice is also the weakness. Suppose 2 blocks your loop users often happen to map to the same line. They take turns evicting each other on every pass, even though the rest of the cache is sitting empty. That is a conflict miss, and the repeated eviction is called thrashing. The cache has plenty of room, but the rigid mapping refuses to use it. The opposite extreme is fully associative. Here a block may live in any line at all, so mapping conflicts simply cannot happen. The price shows up at lookup. Since the block could be anywhere, you must compare your tag against every line at once, in parallel hardware called a content addressable memory. That is a lot of comparators and a lot of power, so full associativity is only practical for small caches. Real caches take the middle road, set-associative. Lines are grouped into sets of, say, 4 ways. The index selects one set, and inside that set the block may go in any of the ways. So you only compare the handful of tags in that one set. Notice the spectrum. One way per set is just direct mapped, and one giant set is fully associative, set-associative dials in between them. So associativity is a tuning knob. Add more ways and conflict misses fall, because blocks have more places to land. But every extra way means more tag comparators, a little more latency and more power, and the payoff shrinks. Going from one way to two helps a lot, but past 4 or 8 ways the miss rate barely moves while the cost keeps climbing. That is why most catches stop right around there. When a set is full and a new block arrives, something has to be evicted, and that choice is the replacement policy. Least recently used evicts whatever you have not touched for the longest, which matches locality well, but gets expensive to track at high associativity. First in, first out just drops the oldest. Random is almost free and works surprisingly well, and a tree-based pseudo least recently used uses a few bits to approximate true recency cheaply, which is what real highly associative catches actually use. Reads are only half the story. What happens when you write? With write-through, every write updates the cache and main memory together, so memory is always current, but you generate a lot of memory traffic. With write-back, you write only into the cache and set a dirty bit, then copy the line out to memory only when it is finally evicted. Write-back saves enormous bandwidth, at the cost of memory being temporarily stale. It helps to sort every miss into 3 buckets. Compulsory misses are the first ever touch of a block. The cache was cold, and nothing could prevent it. Capacity misses happen when your working set is simply larger than the whole cache. Conflict misses come from the mapping, blocks colliding on a set while free space exists elsewhere. And here is the link back. Raising associativity is exactly what shrinks that conflict bucket. Put it together with one equation. Average memory access time equals the hit time, plus the miss rate times the miss penalty. Say a level 1 hit costs 4 cycles, you miss 5% of the time, and a miss costs 200. That is 4 plus 0.05 times 200, which is just 14 cycles on average, against 200 if you had no catchy at all. A high hit rate is what makes slow memory feel fast. Apply the same formula level by level, and the whole hierarchy comes alive. So that is the whole chain. Static RAM gives you raw speed. Locality makes catching pay off. You catch lines, not bytes, place them by direct, set, or fully associative mapping, and choose victims with a replacement policy. Together they turn a few kilobytes into the illusion of fast, almost infinite memory, and quietly hide the memory wall.